Sorry.
Also, just quickly before we start, I did drop the link in the chat for those on Zoom. If you are interested in signing up for a month, you can just sign up there and let us know. That is another way to do it.
And I have to back up because I totally forgot something very important. I apologize. I'm glad I introduced it. We like to go around and do like a popcorn. I know there's a couple new people, so if we could just introduce, somebody start. I'll start with Allie. Just say your name, where you are or where you live, and maybe in one word how you know me. Like it can be from a bar, it can be, obviously I'm your mother or whatever. But only one word. Okay, go, Allie.
One word. Okay. I'm Allie. I live in Bristol, England. And then birth is my word. How I know Alicia.
Nice. Speaking there.
Sit here for a minute.
Oh, sure. Okay, cool.
I'm Ben. I'm in Bristol, England, with Ali. I'm Ali's boyfriend.
One word. How you know Alicia? One word.
Ali.
Popcorn to someone else.
Okay. George.
Ooh, hey everyone. I'm George. First time coming to one of these. I am in Durham, North Carolina. So not too far, I think. And one word also has to be Allie. And I'll pass it to Juliet.
Hello, I'm Juliet. I'm in the Black Canyon. I'm in Colorado. I don't know where I'm at, but daughter. Was that all? I wasn't listening. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little distracted. The Zoom. I'm gonna popcorn to Isabella. I'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm in Berkeley. I go to Berkeley, and my one word is Juliet. Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm currently in Oakland, California, so like 10 minutes away from Berkeley. And my one word is Juliet. And I'll popcorn to Kiki.
Hi, I'm Kiki. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. And my one word is Allie. Oh, popcorn. I'll do Gary.
Hello, I'm Gary. I am in where am I? Pinehurst, North Carolina. Alicia's wife, and popcorn to Bill.
I'm Bill. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, a few hours north of Juliet. Now I know Alicia through her daughters Juliet and Allie, and I'm gonna popcorn to Dory.
Oh, hi, we're over here on Sullivan's Island, and just local friends from Charleston. Laura.
I'm Laura, Charleston, and my word is home.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm in Charleston as well. The bar. The best word. Bar. That's how I know Alicia.
Popcorn to somebody?
John. Come on up.
Sullivan's Island.
You need to come up here, John.
That's it.
Look at his outfit, everybody. Summer chic.
I'm John. I'm on Sullivan's Island, living in the fantasy land. And I think that's everybody.
Wait, what word?
How do you know? Sullivan's.
Okay, but we haven't popcorned everyone. Let's go to. Wait.
You got Jenna.
Jenna.
Hey everyone, I'm Jenna. I'm in San Luis Obispo, California, and my one word is Juliet.
Deborah?
We're Deborah and Jim Huddleston. We actually live in New York, but we're just outside of New York today. And our one word is Brown, as in university.
Welcome everybody. Okay, did we miss anyone?
We're good.
Okay. I'm just gonna say, introduce,
Redo.
Aaron Lipka. Okay, so I was just gonna say that he's my friend. He's prolific, the most prolific person I know in Latin and ancient Greek and Romans and history in general. And oh my God, the list is, you're phenomenal. He is so brilliant. So here's the brilliant Aaron Lipka. Yay!
Hey. Okay, so wait, let me make so this. Hi, everybody. And does this look right? And Juliet, would you want to pull up the first slide?
I'm gonna put it where it's just on you. Okay.
Yeah, do that.
Give me
Since this
2
is-
seconds.
I usually don't use the rig. Yeah, totally. So hi, my name is Aaron, or Lipka to some. I mean, Aaron is acceptable. I live here in Charleston, obviously, and I got to teach Juliet Latin, and now she's gone on and used that for good instead of evil, as I planned it. But I have not. That is not at all what I got to research this time. I saw this salon as an opportunity to learn something or really dive deep into something new. And it so happens, and we'll get to that I'm going to talk about Islamic Spain instead, which is really not in my wheelhouse. So I'll begin by saying that I don't know. I'm only an amateur at this, but also I had a lot of fun reading a lot of books. So that's why I got involved in this. Well, we'll see. So I would say that although I want to make sure there's a time set aside at the end for sure for questions and discussion, I tried to sew moments of reflection or discussion into the slides as I go, and I'll point those out when we hit those points. And if it feels like I should just keep going, I'll just bowl through it, and you guys should just remember what happened and what you want to say about that. But I'd also think that sometimes in the middle of a presentation, I kind of, for my part, I kind of go, ooh, I want to add, or before I forget. And by the time the end discussions come around, I've long forgotten whatever I thought was intelligent to say, or anything. So you'll see, and I'll point that out. In particular, there's some art that I found that was so cool and interesting that really I'm just going to stop and say, hey, what do you guys see? And then we can just kind of do group reflect, and see how it goes. So that's kind of my MO.
Before you start, I have
for
a quick
this.
question.
Yes.
Do you prefer, sorry, this is just for the folks in the room. I know we discussed this beforehand, and I realized. Would you prefer me to share my whole screen so you can see everyone, or are you able to see everyone now?
Well, first of all, because the camera view middle of the presentation, so we got to drag it somehow.
Yeah, so from what we see, the pictures are in a column kind of in the middle of the screen. So we want to try to move that to the side or the bottom.
Okay. Can you minimize it on your end, and then does this show everything now?
Oh, maybe.
You're just gonna have to ignore my comments, my chat.
Yeah, I think that is not showing us the people, so you're just gonna have to keep it full screen, and it's gonna be on their end to show the people.
You can't see the things on the right screen right now?
No, I don't see anything.
You don't see anything?
Well, I see Sappho photos.
Oh, so you can't see any of the Zoom stuff?
No.
Quiet like the yellow one.
Okay.
If the screens of people are in the middle of their screen, they might be in standard view and they can move that around.
Yeah, the reason why I was going to do this was so that they can put it on the right side and it doesn't block any of the letters, but I just don't know if they know how to do that. So
it's just under view.
Okay. Because ideally right now you should be able to put all of the people on the right side and block the side with Sappho's photos or whatever.
Right. I think they need to fix it from their end though.
But you guys can't see my control bar at the bottom.
No.
Okay. Okay, cool. That was what I was worried about. Lipka, if you, are you guys trying to move it right now? Is there anyone there that is technologically savvy? Because all you need to do is move, like toggle the people, like the image of all the people to the right side of the screen. And that should work.
Amy.
Yep.
Okay.
Yay.
I'm just gonna say really quickly, yeah.
Why not?
That's fine. That's fine.
We have two more people now I want to introduce really quickly. This is Amy.
Hi.
And this is Susan. Hello. Okay, we'll just skip all the other stuff. Back to Aaron.
Okay.
Good?
Yeah, I think it's good.
All right, cool.
So, Juliet, do you think it's ready? On your end, well, let me say this. So this is the Moor's last sigh. And I guess I'm just going to jump in that this is about Granada, which is in southern Spain, and the end of that last kingdom, which was Islamic. So let's just go. Let's just start. Can you click to the next one? There we go. Oh, well, so a little bit about this is that I trialed this with some neighbors, and they wouldn't belong in this group. I think that they would not. They'd be welcome, but they'd be different. And they were let me put it like this. I am neither Muslim nor am I. Go ahead. Can you click the first thing there? I pretend to know insider knowledge on the Quran, Islamic studies. This is not my area of professional study. That's Rome and Greece. So this is entirely amateur, and anything that I say is all at the behest of, or at the mercy, I should say, of the books that I read. And they're not in the original language. They surely share some bias. Click again. And then I'll just say that although this will talk a lot about Islam, it'll talk a lot about Christian, and it'll talk a lot about Jewish concepts, communities, and beliefs. It's never meant to be or espouse any anything. It's always, when I mention Christianity, I don't mean it as a faith, but as a community. And the same applies to Islam and Judaism. So if I misstep, forgive me, and please point out my error vociferously so that I can learn from it. And one more click. This is going to be interesting. There's a lot of clicks. The impetus behind a lot of my interest in Spain comes from some of my travels in Spain, because I hiked the pilgrimage route, the Camino de Santiago, twice now. I did it last summer, most recently. And there's nothing for it. If you think about Spain, it's totally different when you go there. I've found so many cultural differences, and not difference from here, but traveling through Basque country versus traveling through Castile versus getting into Santiago, which is a whole nother area. That was the seed, the kernel of interest that sent me down learning more about this. And so I think it'll be fun. All right, let's go. And here's an opening concept here. Click one more. What do you guys know? What is the common conception of Iberia? That is to say, Spain and Portugal. Or do you want me to just rip on?
Wait, specifically, what do you?
Yeah, like what do you? Well, no, you know what? I'm not going to ask yet. Good. This is what I need to know. That between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic, between Africa and Europe, this particular piece of the world is a remarkable crossroads for religious reasons, for cultural reasons, for ethnic reasons, for economic reasons. And it's kind of this interesting combination, and it's gone through a lot of changes for thousands of years, from the Phoenicians to the Romans, the Greeks to the Vikings got in there at one point. The British are in Gibraltar now. What the heck? So it's an interesting crossroads, and that has to be understood as a baseline for what we're talking about. And click again. And click one more time. although Spain is definitely a unified country as we observe it today, and they all speak Spanish, it's actually not a monolith. It's really quite diverse. If you go there, there's the Basques, they're in the north, there's the Catalans in the east, they're in Barcelona, there's the Galicians in the northwest, and the Valencians in the southeast, and all of them have their own recognizable dialects. In fact, the Basque language is entirely different from everything, from all Spanish. They speak Spanish, but they also speak Basque. And so knowing this gives us some insight into the kind of diversity and ethnic diversity that you can see in Spain all the way up till today. One more click. And part of Spain is Muslim. And that's fascinating because, we see Spain as being kind of one of the bastions, if not second only to Italy, as one of the most Catholic European countries. And Catholics and Muslims haven't always been traditionally understood to get along. And although their population is small today, and it's increased actually due to immigration from North Africa, they are resident, not just residents, they are citizens of Spain. And that's intriguing in its own way. So a question, click one more time. And I'm actually going to not ask for input yet, but I'm going to posit this, and I want y'all to, I hope y'all will think about what this means as I kind of talk, is what has occurred and what is occurring in Spain that is culturally relevant and exciting or challenging or of interest, pertinent to all of these cultural and ethnic and religious differences. Okay, so click again. How am I doing? Okay. So take a look at, I like maps. Juliet knows this. And take a look at this map. So if we go back to 1000 CE, look at how much of Spain was under Islamic government. And that is to say, the Caliphate of Cordoba was entirely run and operated by an Islamic series of rulers. And if you look in the north, you can see all those scattered kingdoms. They're Christian kingdoms, but they were weaker. They were economically poorer, and they were certainly not unified in any sort of religious or international sense, whereas the Caliphate was. And furthermore, if you click again, there's an interesting concept called convivencia, which is to say, does anyone want to guess what that word means?
Think of convention.
Convention's close, but think about the viv. It's the
living.
Yeah, it's the living togetherness. Living together, nailed it. Wow. Wait, is that Alex Werrell?
What?
Great Scott. How you doing, man? Okay. I'll return to you in a moment, young man. Convivencia is a living togetherness, and what has been studied and seems to be very interesting about this period was that although the Muslims ran the show, this was an area where Judean and Christian inhabitants outnumbered their rulers seriously, and the Islamic rulers did not coerce them into Islam, that they lived together. And although there were small social prices to pay, for example, you had to pay a tax if you weren't Islamic, or if you were Jewish, you had to live in the ghettos. Those people were allowed to live their lives and follow their faith as they saw fit, and that was pretty darn remarkable in my opinion. No, you're good. Come on, you're good. That was pretty cool and remarkable for that period in time. Okay, click one more time. I think. Well, I just said that, which is that although it's probably too broad of a thing to say that this was an ideal where all three peoples of the book inhabited a land that was given freedom and true equity, that the Caliphate really represented an interesting melange of religious and cultural identity. Okay, now go to the blue one. I've practiced this, I know the colors. Okay, so let's jump a little bit ahead, about 480 years, and this is where our story really gets rocking. Because as you can see, by 480, the last Islamic state of Spain is much reduced. It's hanging on by a thread down along the southern coast there, closest to Africa. And it's called the Kingdom of Granada, also known as Al-Andalus or Andalusia. Granada, I'll be interchanging the Kingdom of Granada with the capital city, also called Granada. So if I get confused or confusing at any point, that's part of the problem, is that the city and the kingdom are the same name. Okay, but let's talk. This is a cool moment. Let's talk about 1480. This is an interesting time. Click twice. So what was Europe like in 1480? Well, first of all, Christopher Columbus had not sailed the ocean blue, and the New World was unknown to Europeans, unless you're from Iceland. And that meant that Spain was as far west as you could get. Like, that was kind of an important aspect of it, and certainly shaped their worldview. Click again. And we should bear in mind that in 1480, if you were a Christian in Europe, you answered to the Pope. There was no question about, I guess there were certain heretics here and there, but generally speaking, in a religious sense, the Pope ran the show. And although here we are talking about an Islamic state, everywhere else was beholden to Rome. And in particular, I should add that in contrast to that, Jews in most Christian, kingdoms that espoused Christianity were oppressed. That was a tough life for them compared to a couple hundred years ago in the Caliphate. Click again, and we can talk about how the fact is that all Europe wasn't in any way unified in a political sense, because Italy was broken into city-states, from Naples to Milan to Florence and Rome and many more. And Germany was even worse. The Holy Roman Empire, as we all know, was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. Okay, I've indulged myself too much. Click again on that one. And it should be borne in mind that death was ever present in the lives of this part of medieval Europe, because the Black Plague was still present, and you could catch it, and there was no cure. And it was a horrible, painful, ghastly way to kill. It's the best way to die. So people lived with that in their minds. And one more click. In the political sense, the Byzantine Empire had just fallen only about 40 years ago. The Byzantine Empire, which was an extension of the Roman Empire going back over 2,000 years. And although probably wasn't recognizably Roman, it was certainly recognizably Christian, and all of Europe was terrified that the Ottoman Turks were coming to get them next. The Turks had not been kind during the sack of Constantinople, and as you know, to indulge myself again, Constantinople, it's no longer called Constantinople. It's called Istanbul. What happened to Constantinople? That's nobody's business but the Turks. Yeah. All right, go to the next slide. I'm having fun. So in Granada, the city, there was a fortified palace called the Alhambra, that is not to be confused with Alhambra Hall here in Charleston. And it was a magnificent example of what most people will refer to as the Spanish Renaissance, because it was so ornately decorated. First of all, the architecture alone, you can just take a look at the idea of the fortress, but click again, and we'll just take a little look at just some of the many works of art that are housed in are housed in the Alhambra to this day. They were renowned for their pottery and glassware, their architecture and their gardening. The calligraphy, it should be borne in mind that the Islamic injunction against actual representations of things, like do not draw pictures of people or places, meant that their architecture was, or their art was very stylized in nature. And all of this was emblematic of wealth, or at least the appearance of wealth in the Alhambra itself. And most people would have said that this was a high watermark in the art and architecture of Spain. All right, click again. So our first character to introduce is the Sultan Abul Hassan Ali, who was the inheritor of a period of time in Granada that he saw himself restoring the glory of the Islamic kingdom, and he was very belligerent to his Christian neighbors. He refused to pay tribute, and he made lots of border raids particularly against the Castilians, which didn't endear the Christians across the border to him. But it did endear most of his soldiers and people to him. They thought of him as a hardliner. They liked his attitude, and they liked the fact that they were proud to be a part of his kingdom, except that then he went and got himself, as a sultan will, he had a harem, and he added this young Christian something to the harem and was completely enamored with her and made her his favorite. He actually had been married. Traditionally, the sultan was married to another royal, and he had a wife who we'll meet in a moment, but she was brushed aside. She wasn't even allowed to see him. He just spent all his time, and instead of fighting Christians, he hung out with this chica, and nobody liked that at all. They thought that he was totally henpecked, that they didn't, and that they were really concerned that this woman, and perhaps more concerningly, this Christian woman, she did convert. Her Christian name was Isabella. Her Muslim name became Zoraya, which is a reference to one of the stars in the Pleiades. They were really concerned that Zoraya was going to drive the show and through her puppet, the Sultan. And they really started looking down on poor Abu Hassan and thinking that this woman, by the way, she had 2 sons by him, which was a big threat because it meant that they may become one day the Sultan. And no one was more terrified than, drum roll, next slide. No one was more terrified, too far. No spoilers. No one was more terrified than his former wife, well, his current wife and the older wife, whose name was Aisha al-Hura, and her son Abu Abdallah, which if you pronounce it in Castilian, and as I will continue to refer to him as, is pronounced Boabdil. Y'all figure that one out? Try saying that, Abu Abdallah. Boabdil. Can you sense the shifting of Bu Abdallah, Boabdil? I don't know. It's an interesting reflection on how the pronunciation, Castilian attempts to pronounce Arabic words and Arabic names would have sounded. So Boabdil was her son. He was young when these actions came to play. That's why they call him the Rey Chico, which is the boy king. But Aisha was both insulted that her husband, the Sultan, would ignore her, and terrified that she and her children would be put to the sword because Zoraya was the rising star. So when her husband had gone away on a military campaign, she took the bull by the horns, declared her son to be the new Sultan, and everyone kind of agreed with that. They thought that the old Sultan, was not worthy of it, and that they were going to go with Boabdil instead. And so there were 2 sultans all of a sudden, and that was a bad thing to happen, because right at that time, Christians in Spain were gearing up to take a crack at Granada. And if you go to the next slide, we can talk about that. Because these two royals, Ferdinand and Isabella, who I hope you've heard of, had recently been married, and their marriage consolidated power and wealth in Spain as never before. And they decided to use that power to complete what had been started hundreds of years ago, which was the Reconquista of Spain. And the Reconquista was a moment where, or was a series of events, really. If you look at that map, there's another map, there's more, don't worry. The Christians were slowly pushing Islamic influence in life off the peninsula to the south. And Isabella and Ferdinand were determined to make this the time that it was completed. The final campaigns between 1483 and 1492, which is surprising that it was 11 years of fighting, when you would have thought they were, if you look at that little green strip hanging on by a thread to the south, that the enormous wealth and power would have displaced the Muslims easily. They did not, and I could get into the weeds about the whole military conflict, but the main point was that the kingdom itself was divided between father and son, two sultans trying to rule the same country. And eventually Abu Hassan dies, and Boabdil is able to kind of grab a little more control, but just when things are starting to turn, he gets captured in a battle, and Ferdinand holds him hostage. His mother has to pay a big price, a heavy ransom, to get her son back, and he still has to sign papers that says that he's willing to be a vassal of the Catholic monarchs of Spain. And that really was a bad thing for him, because it ended up being the reason that his people distrusted him. He could never be the hardliner that his father had been, because he was subject to some version of political loyalty to the Catholic monarchs, and that would come back to haunt him. So that's where, as the Reconquista grinds on, go to the next slide. And this is one place where I do want to pause for everybody. And
1492.
1492, which is, by the way, what's most famous about that year?
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Yes.
He did. In the same year, this was that happened. Also, genocide happened, as Juliet pointed out. That's about to be discussed. Oh, we're talking about New World genocide? Yes, I think that's what she meant. That's a Howard Zinn chapter. I think we can talk about. But first of all, isn't this a wonderful picture?
Yeah.
Doesn't that grab your attention? And I just want to hit pause for a minute here and let the people have their voice. What do you see? What's going on?
There are women within what looks like two warring confrontation, two royalty or leader confrontation.
Mm-hmm. What you clearly see the one notable woman on the white horse. Do you know who that would be? Isabel. That's Isabel of Spain.
Is she really at the forefront of the fight? I think I terrified of fight.
Yeah.
First guy.
And Juliet raised her hand.
Oh, Juliet, what you got?
I was just gonna say the focal point is the girl, but never mind.
Isn't the focal point Isabella for sure? Although, who do you see in red there beside her?
Her son.
Not her son. Her son is, I think her son is the page
Holding the horse.
and holding the horse.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
She only had one son. He would have been a teenager in
Okay.
1492.
okay.
But the man on the horse,
Oh, on the horse.
yeah, the beside her on the horse, I should say.
In red.
Is
In
that
red.
Ferdinand?
That's Ferdinand.
Okay.
And I won't digress, but Ferdinand was, if Isabel was the religious kind of symbol of virtue, and the rallying personage for Spain, Ferdinand was the real politic master operating behind the scenes. He was a clever and perhaps a cruel man, as we'll discuss. What do you see? Who do you see on the other side? Well, there's definitely peasants, sure, behind him.
Who's on the horse?
Who's on the horse?
The Buddha.
That's Boabdil. Yeah, the last, yeah, that guy. Who is, and I don't know if you can see, but if you look carefully, he's holding something. Do you know what he's holding? Feel free to stand up and look. Oh, okay, I'll spoil it. It's the keys to the fortress of the Alhambra. And the obviously this portrait isn't exactly accurate, but it's the apocryphal thing was that he says, I give you the keys of a paradise. And there's a lot of ways you can unpackage that, because Islam sees paradise views paradise as a garden, and the Alhambra certainly was well vegetated, but also the kingdom of Granada itself, and therefore, you know, all of the things that came with it, including, of course, what I believe the Spanish monarchs would have thought of as their own salvation, that unifying Spain for the Pope and for Catholicism, for Christianity, was a thing that they had worked hard and paid a lot of money and shed a lot of blood to do. Anyway, when I saw this picture, I just wanted to stop and just talk about it. There's some other cool pictures coming too, so this is tip of the iceberg. Last parting note, the year that this particular painting was made was in 1882. So clearly it was not in the 1480s and 1490s, but that was a period of time in Europe where real nationalist thought was really starting to take root. Italy and Germany in particular had been recently unified. So the concepts underlying this picture are meant to glorify the unification of Spain, probably long after any awareness of this event, any good memory of this event would have taken place.
And that's Alhambra in the background.
And you can, yeah, right. I would love, you can see the Alhambra on the hill in the background, the Islamic soldiers who've been starved out after the end of a lengthy siege. I think that all the Spanish guys look pretty posh. They look, you know, pretty well cared for. But you know, that's the way they wanted it to look. Okay, go to another picture. Next one. And so after surrendering, the Catholic monarchs did not treat Boabdil very poorly. They said, you have permission to either stay in Spain and be our loyal servant or loyal subject, or you can leave and we won't stop you. So he decided to leave, which was somewhat of a tragedy, certainly for his people. But before he left, he asked Ferdinand and Isabella to treat his people with kindness. And when he said his people, he put it in writing as the Muslims and Jews of his kingdom. And they said, sure, yeah, we'll look after them as if they were our own. And he said, that's good enough, but he's also going to hit the bricks. So I think this picture is poignant. First of all, I didn't mention her before, but his wife, you see her just like in distress behind him. He's the one standing central, preparing to leave the Alhambra for the last time. And his wife, Moraima, and his young son is being comforted, were all on their way out. And although they temporarily stayed on the coast of Spain, they ultimately end up in Morocco, in the Sultanate of Fez, as we'll see. So this picture too, I think, shows some of what I think the last moments of what it was like to be Islamic, and the sorrow, I think, that followed with knowing that their last ruler was departing in exile and in defeat. Questions?
So when you say the Islamic folks and Jewish folks, when he's asking the Spanish people, or Roman Catholic, I suppose,
yes,
to be kind to them, so he puts the Jewish and the Muslim faith on equal footing.
Not if you look at all of it, it's not truly equal.
Okay.
That it would be the Muslims who benefited more. But the Jews were the fact that the Jews were even mentioned rather than thrown entirely under the bus, right, has to be taken at least with some acknowledgement, I think, about his care for the people under his kingdom, under his care, if you like. Of course, it should be said by now that at that point, Granada had emptied itself of all Christians, that they were no longer welcome because they were members of the invading force, and that there was no reason for any good Christian to stick around, probably to suffer terribly at the hands of Muslims, and less perhaps of Jews, but also wouldn't they want to go work for what looked like the inevitable winner? So that Granada, the kingdom of Granada, had ceased to be that convivencia that I mentioned a while ago, and that it was a fractured sense that the Jews were still at least treated with care, some respect, and we're going to get back to that. So hold that thought. But let's go one more slide. So this is where everything, and this is kind of the moment, that watershed, this kind of romantic concept, where Boabdil leaves the city for the last time, crossing the Sierra Nevada. That's the original Sierra Nevada, with his retinue of Islamic followers and his family, and he gets to the last place where he can turn around and look, and the moment, the kind of dramatic reveal or whatever, is that he turns around and looks, and he sighs deeply for everything that he's fought for and everything that he's lost, whether he was up to the task or not. And that his mother says, and this is an apocryphal quote, and I translated it, "Weep like a woman for the kingdom you could not defend like a man."
Now, this is Buddha,
Boabdil, yes, and his mom.
who's the first. His mom's the Muslim.
Yes.
Okay.
The older of the wives, you're
Okay.
saying. Yes, correct. And actually Zariah, interestingly, converts back to Christianity after Isabella and Ferdinand come through, and lives in Sevilla a happy life. So there's no justice.
Well, is her Christianity in a faith-based, or is it like blood-based?
She was born Christian.
Okay, so that's not
Okay, but that's
not
yep.
that means nothing to a faith-based Christian.
Correct.
Okay.
So she was not genetically Islamic. She was a convert.
Got
And
it.
by the way,
Okay.
I don't know if you know too much about it. If you are Islamic and if you are converts to Islam and you then reject Islam, there is every reason for it is okay to kill you.
Like being cast out of the
Yes.
Church of Scientology.
Correct. A lot like that.
Yeah.
That the concept is if you were ignorant of Islam before, you can be forgiven. But if you've been indoctrinated and you've accepted the belief system and then reject it, they can kill you.
Hey,
Similar to
Yeah.
Pardon me 1 second.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
want to make sure, Juliet, can you guys hear when people are asking questions? Okay.
Oh, do you want me to like repeat? Okay, you can hear?
Just want to make sure.
Good question. Good point.
Similar to that, my understanding is that Muslims could take Christians, anybody that was not Islamic could be made a slave.
Mhm.
One of the big incentives to convert was to become Muslim, so you couldn't be a slave.
That's true. In fact, it's interesting in both Islam and in Christianity, there was the concept that you were the heathen other.
Yes.
And therefore it was allowable to murder or enslave you.
Right.
Both religions would have felt more or less the same about
And
that.
that's what generated the huge white slave market in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
When the
Mhm.
Islamics ruled in Spain and
Sure.
North
Yeah.
Africa. The only other thing I was going to add is that
Yeah.
on your list of 1480, one of the big things that was happening was the Portuguese were developing the trade route around Africa.
Oh yeah.
And that created a lot of money.
Mhm.
And it gave them a big disadvantage. Or gave the Christians an advantage monetarily. Yeah.
For sure. In fact, I will return to Portugal in a little bit, because Portugal is fascinating, and I don't want to derail yet, but the Portuguese were a Christian reflection, but not the same as the Castilians, and they will play a role in what is to come.
Right, they had a huge blood feud, and that's what motivated
Yep.
them to
Yep.
finance Christopher Columbus.
For sure. Actually, what was interesting, Columbus came to Portugal first.
Well, he was Portuguese.
He was Genoese. He was
No,
actually
excuse me.
Italian.
Yes, he was
That's right.
Italian.
Yeah.
Who was the second guy? But yeah, they
Magellan, maybe you're talking
no, the
about.
Portuguese. Yeah, Magellan.
Yeah.
Magellan was
Mhm.
Portuguese,
Mhm.
and they wouldn't finance him with the.
That's going to come in a
But
few.
Spain, the Spanish finance.
Okay, you poked the bear. Columbus
Yeah.
came to King John II of Portugal, and John said, "There is nothing on the other side of the ocean, and if you can get there, you'd run out of water first. I will not invest in you. And by the way, this Africa thing that the Portuguese were trying to round the Cape of Good Hope was going pretty well. So he didn't feel like Columbus's westward offer was worth the gamble.
They didn't need it.
But they didn't need it either.
Yeah.
The Portuguese were terrible.
Right.
But that's where, as a second bet, Columbus came down to Isabella and said, "I've got a cool idea. Do you want to pay for 3 ships?"
And she was like, sure.
And she said, "Yeah, we'll throw the guy a bone." And yada yada yada. That happened.
Well, they gave them 3 ships they didn't need anymore because they kicked the Moors out.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
Pardon me, I
Yeah.
apologize again, you guys. It's really easy for us in this environment to just talk. And unfortunately, it's not the same for you guys online. So perhaps if you could send a little chat to Juliet or somebody, and like, we can't see you all, so I don't know if you're raising your hand or not, but I want to make sure that everyone can talk. And I also wanted to say, normally, a lot of times people will make their presentation, 15 to 20 minutes, and then we talk after. But because of the way that this is being presented, I think it's really beneficial that we talk during. So I definitely want you guys online to be able to partake as well. Yeah, just maybe do the chat, let us know, because we cannot see you, and you totally need to interrupt and say whatever you want to say, so we can all partake in it. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you're not comfortable interrupting, I just send it in the chat, but just message me and I will gladly interrupt. I'm good at that.
Sorry, Erin.
Please feel free to interrupt me at all times.
I just want them to be able to talk. as
I
well.
agree. And I want to hear what they have to say too. And like I said, I sort of, as I designed this, I wanted it to be I wanted points of participation just to break the monologue, right? Let me get a drink. So, okay, but we're also we're getting close to a key point. So this is kind of like the moment, but go to the next slide. And what I told you about Boabdil trying to reckon with the Catholic monarchs and get them to be cool about it, they weren't cool about it. As soon as Boabdil left, they broke their promise. And quite ironically, in fact, brutally, in the Alhambra, in the same year, they made a decree that surprised everyone that said all the Jews in Spain had 2 months to leave or convert. And if you click 1, I think it'll come up. It will come up. And those Jewish residents of Spain could not take gold, silver, or jewels with them, and any debts owed to the Jews were void. So these people who were probably, in many cases, middle class or wealthy, were suddenly rendered destitute in the exact moment that they were being forcibly exiled. Or converted. If you click 1 more, plenty of those Jewish families realized they didn't have an option. That they didn't have the money that it would take to leave Spain, and they had nowhere to go. So they were forcibly converted to Christianity, to Catholicism en masse. That's what that wood carving on the far left is a picture of. And those Jews were conversos, but they were also never truly trusted. And at the exact same time, the Spanish Inquisition was coming into full swing, and they were knocking on doors, pointing at conversos and saying, you're a Jew, you've always been a Jew, and we're taking you off to torture and murder you, and keep all of your money and land. So it was pretty terrible. But I see somebody's peacing out. Hey, thanks for coming.
Sorry, we gotta go because it's late, but thank you so much. We'll definitely watch the rest of it online.
Bye, Allie. Bye, Ben.
Bye.
See ya.
Okay, so next slide is that this act, the Alhambra Decree, created a diaspora, a Jewish diaspora. I don't think it gets a lot of historical acknowledgement, but this created Sephardic Judaism. That since there were lots of Jews in Spain at the time, and they ended up all over the place. Many of them went to the Holy Land. Many of them sought refuge in the Ottoman Empire, which was actually far more tolerant, much like the kingdom of Granada was of Judaism. And many of them, there were healthy Jewish communities, not great ones, but in Venice and in Rome and other places in Italy, even as far up into Europe, as you'll see, as in Germany and Prague, so Austria. So those places were all the places that received the Jewish exiles, and some of them went to the New World. Brazil was just cracking. The Portuguese were swinging out that way too. It was kind of a tough life, but they got there. And so that was kind of where they ended up leaving, all on account of this. It's a cuckoo. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna let it run its course. It's done. Okay, one more slide. So here's what I think is pretty cool. Boabdil is a maligned character, and for hundreds of years he was both the enemy who had to be defeated to unify Spain, and he was also the representation of Islam and Islamic presence that the Spanish both hated and wanted to be a part of. Boabdil's kingdom was wealthy. They pillaged it. Boabdil's palace was beautiful. It's still beautiful today. It was just inhabited by Christians. They turned the mosques into cathedrals and left it that way. Boabdil himself fled to Morocco and lived there, probably sad life in exile, and ultimately was buried in, although you can see that memorial, that's a memorial, but it was a sad one because it wasn't in his homeland. And we're not even truly sure that the people who are buried there is the Sultan. But then, Juliet, click again. And this picture on the left, these two statues, these two sculptures, is in Granada today. It was only erected in 1997. And the standing figure with her head bowed is meant to symbolize the people of Granada. And the seated Sultan is Boabdil, and she offers him a single rose. And that, although that was unveiled in 1997, and you can think about what has happened both before that time and after that time, it poses an interesting question about what Spanish identity and attitudes towards their Muslim residents is like. So I'm going to ask a question, but you can't answer it yet because I'm going to get to the end and then we can talk about it. Click once. For these statues, what are we asked to consider? What is it that Granada and Boabdil suggests to us in that pose? Okay, click again. I think I'm basically done. Oh, yeah, I'm done. Okay, but here's some of my books. And if you know me at all, you'll know that I could go at length on all these books. So that's a different discussion. But I liked reading these books. The only one I didn't read cover to cover is the last one, the Rushdie book. And click one more time. And click again. Yeah, muchas gracias. There you go. So there we go.
Put everyone back on the screen, Juliet,
Please.
because now we can see who's talking and who wants to talk. Just put your hand up. Thank you, Karen. Amazing.